Hi, I'm Lila. This is my thesis presentation video. Thank you in advance for listening to it, paying attention, hopefully. I probably hate this a lot more than you do, so anyway, let's get started. Today I'm discussing the super fun, lighthearted topic that most definitely will not add to your current sense of existential dread. Murder! After telling people that I was doing my senior thesis paper on serial killers, I received a few odd stares, concerned comments, but I swear that I'm not that strange. Think of Lizzie Borden, Jack the Ripper, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Zodiac Killer. I'm sure you all know at least one of those names. There's something in everybody, hopefully, that finds death, murder, the macabre equally as intriguing as it is disgusting. As a kid, after long nights and hard days of kindergarten, I would either be swelled to slumber by bedtime stories of various strange connections my father had to serial killers, or read myself to sleep with my favorite book, The Headless Horseman. One mystery that I struggled with for years, though, about these stories was how was it that any human could so viciously murder other people? So this thesis gave me the perfect motivation to actually begin to understand that question. I found many theories about it, but one in particular had a lot of momentum and facts behind it to support it. So thinking that I had found this really groundbreaking theory, I looked it up on Google and tried to email the government about it right away. The FBI already has a whole unit for this exact theory. It's called the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit, or the BAU, as I'll probably refer to it throughout the video. And it was founded in 1970. I've been left in the dust and arrived 50 years late to the murder party. So maybe I should just tell you what the BAU actually does. The FBI BAU analyzes criminal behavior, commonly victim patterns, locations, and past behavior of criminals. The theory at play throughout all of this behavioral analysis, though, is that childhood traumas experienced by serial killers may be the key to predicting and thus stopping future criminal actions by the said killer. Though it's not scientifically proven, as there is no way to prove motivations and intentions, the proof is in the pudding. In reality, again, there is no way to prove the intentions, motivations, or predictions of criminal behavior, past or present, but there is a theory in this practice. So I'm going to explain how it is exactly that we can argue childhood trauma analysis leads to apprehension of serial killers. So the whole point of this thesis is essentially proving that criminal behavior can be analyzed to predict and apprehend criminals based off their past traits and patterns seen in either physical evidence or possible psychiatric evidence that they may leave in their crime scenes. Criminal behavior analysis combines psychology with motivations of violent serial killers. First, we should establish the type of killer I will be discussing. I'm talking about serial killers specifically. Normally, serial killers are defined by the FBI as those who act by their own will and commit murders with 3 or more consecutive victims. They are also strictly psychopaths. There is, in fact, a difference between psychopaths and sociopaths. Psychopathy is a verified illness that has a proper diagnosis, a very intensive one, and it includes the lack of moral empathy, guilt, or self-doubt. Sociopathy, on the other hand, is not a formal diagnosis, nor is it a verified illness. It just place killers, criminals, or everyday people. Sociopaths are not inherently violent. In fact, more CEOs in this nation are sociopathic comparatively to the general population of American prisoners. 35% of CEOs are considered sociopathic, while only 24% of American prisoners are considered sociopathic. So sociopathic is not a correlation to violence directly or even criminal behavior directly. And of course, when I'm talking about specific numbers of sociopaths, quote unquote, I am meaning full sociopaths of what we call the dark triad. The dark triad is consistent of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Narcissism is the extreme concern and holier-than-thou outlook of oneself. Machiavellianism is compulsive lying and a sense of grandiose, that you can just get away with anything. And psychopathy is the complete lack of empathy, as I previously stated. You probably show Machiavellianism or narcissism, maybe none, maybe both of those, maybe just one or the other. Psychopaths have another triad just for themselves, which is formerly known as the McDonald triad. This includes known signals in children for possible psychopathy. This McDonald triad includes bedwetting, hurting small animals, and fire setting. Note that these are extremes in specific cases. Of course, all kids wet the bed. Kids may start fires, maybe play with fire, though I would definitely be worried if your kid comes home with dead animals. That's no. The importance of understanding this difference between sociopathy and psychopathy comes into play when investigators begin to build profiles for criminals. A profile includes the specific preferences and traits seen in the crimes and the crime scenes. Often it's a victim type. Victim types for specific killers may be where they kill men, women, brunettes, blondes, blacks, whites, kids, adults, Jewish, Muslims, liberals, AA members, college students, hitchhikers, so on and so forth. If they kill a specific type of person, that can be noted by police, and obviously more protection can be given to those groups of people and hopefully lead to the killer's capture. This is what scene investigators look for when analyzing physical behavior to build a profile. State and local police cannot crack themselves. The FBI comes in with the BAU to analyze the behavior traits that they pick up from the physical evidence that they find, so that they can build a background for the killer. This is a psychological profile. In the cases where they also know who the killer is already and they're trying to find them, the FBI can look back into the killer's childhood, analyze the problems they may have had, what went wrong, essentially, and what may be affecting the actions and the behavior that the killer exhibits in their crimes. So instead of just explaining all these definitions for 15 minutes, I'm going to give you one example of how analysis of childhood has led to apprehension. So one of the most famous examples of this is Ted Bundy. He kidnapped, raped, and murdered numerous young women and girls during the 70s and maybe earlier, though those details are unclear. 34 homicides. However, it is widely believed that he has committed much more. I'll tell you about some of his crimes, not going into too much detail, just so we can look at, just so you can get a real life understanding of how behavioral analysis can affect the outcomes of certain investigations. So for the first 3 years of his life, Bundy lived in Philadelphia with his maternal grandparents. His maternal grandparents raised him as their own son to avoid the social stigma that accompanies birth outside of wedlock, because his mother had him, obviously, when she was outside of wedlock, and she was also very young. Family, friends, and Ted were all told that his grandparents were his real parents and that his mother was his older sister. So obviously he's eventually going to find out the truth about this when he is a younger boy. I believe he's about 13. And this causes a very strange and just uncomfortable family dynamic in the interpersonal relationships between Ted and his mom and Ted and his grandparents. First time Ted attempted murder was January 4th, 1974. He enters the basement apartment of 18-year-old Karen Sparks and bludgeons her with a metal rod and assaults her. That's very graphic, I am so sorry, but that's what he does. She, however, survives. She remains unconscious for 10 days, but she lives with obviously permanent physical and mental disabilities. Detectives from King County, where University of Washington is located in Seattle, they grew increasingly concerned about the chronic disappearances of female students, but there is no physical evidence. The missing women have little in common with each other as far as they're concerned. However, they are all young, attractive, white college students with long hair parted in the middle. That seems like a very innocuous detail to remember, but it is very, very important, as we will see. In the mid-70s, Bundy is working in Olympia, Washington, as the assistant director of the Seattle Crime Prevention Advisory Commission, where he writes pamphlets for women on avoiding rape and assault. Later, he works at the Department of Emergency Services, a state government agency involved in the search for missing women. It's very ironic. Near the water, and 5 female witnesses describe an attractive young man wearing a white tennis outfit with his left arm in a sling, speaking with a light accent, perhaps Canadian or British, introducing himself as Ted. He asks for their help in unloading a sailboat from his tan, bronze-colored Volkswagen Beetle. However, 4 of these 5 witnesses refuse, but one accompanies him to his car, but then she sees that there is no sailboat in the car and flees back to her friends. 3 additional witnesses see him approach Janice Ann Ott, who's 23, with the same sailboat story, and she leaves with him. And 4 hours later, Denise Mary Nasland, a 19-year-old girl, leaves to go to the picnic bathroom where Ted Bundy was seen hanging out near, and never returns. Neither women return. King County Police finally have a detailed description of the suspect, though, to play it and broadcast it on local television stations. Co-workers with Ted Bundy, notably Anne Rule, who wrote a very good book called Stranger Beside Me. It's very good. She knew him, co-worker. So co-workers recognize the profile of the sketch and the car that is broadcasted. Bundy is a possible suspect, but of course this is the mid-70s, so the detectives didn't look into it. They thought it was unlikely that a clean-cut, attractive student who's in law that has absolutely no adult criminal record could actually be the perpetrator. This gives Bundy the chance to then move out of Seattle. So in August 1974, Bundy receives acceptance into University of Utah Law School and then moves to Salt Lake City. He is then quickly disappointed with his academic talent. He does not compare very well to the other students at the law school, which he says, quote, "It was a great disappointment to me," end quote. So after completing the first year, disappointing himself, a string of homicides begin in Utah the following month. So on August 16th, 1975, Bundy is arrested by Utah Highway Patrol officer who had observed Bundy cruising a residential area in pre-dawn hours. After seeing the patrol car, Bundy flees the area at high speed. So in the car, the police officer finds a ski mask, a second mask fashioned from someone's underwear, women's underwear, a crowbar, handcuffs, trash bags, coil of rope, an ice pick, and other items initially assumed to be burglary tools. But Bundy is then placed on 24-hour surveillance after another detective in Utah remembered a similar suspect and car description from a previous kidnapping in Utah. So after many more disappearances and possible murders in Utah, in February 1976, Bundy stands trial for the DeRanch kidnapping. After a 4-day trial, Ted Bundy is found guilty of kidnapping and assault. So on June 1st, 1977, Bundy is transported 40 miles from Glenwood Springs, Colorado, to Pitkin County Courthouse in Aspen for a preliminary hearing. During a recess, he asks to visit the courthouse's library to research his case. He opens a window and jumps to the ground from the second story, injuring his right ankle as he lands. He then runs into the Aspen Mountains. He drives back into Aspen, where 2 police officers notice his car weaving in and out of lanes and pulls him over. He had been a fugitive for 6 days. On the night of December 30th, with most of the jail staff on Christmas break and nonviolent prisoners on furlough with their families, Bundy piles books and files on his bed, covers them with a blanket to simulate his sleeping body, and climbs into a crawl space. He breaks through the ceiling into the apartment of the chief jailer, who was out for the evening with his wife, changes into street clothes from the jailer's closet, and walks out the front door to freedom. So the important note to observe about Bundy's case is all of this stems from his turbulent childhood. The realization that his sister was actually his mother completely ruins the whole family dynamic he had grown used to as a boy. So he develops a very intense hatred for his mother. And what's very interesting is his ex-wife. She said he became, quote, very upset, end quote, whenever she considered cutting her hair, which was long and parted in the middle. So he kills women that reminds him of his mother, because in reality, that's what he wants to do. He wants to kill his mother. So what we can learn from Bundy is, again, that his hatred for women eventually boiled over, resulting in a victim type for him. And that was, again, long, brown hair, white, young, attractive. That was his victim type. Because of his tell you about right now, if you are curious, Edmund Kemper is a great example of childhood traumas resulting in victim patterns, victim types. There is a correlation that we can see here. Is it proven? No. Again, you cannot prove intentions, motivations. Events in childhood are very important to understanding and then predicting who the killer will kill. There are quite a few detectives who also disagree with this theory, who don't believe in behavioral analysis or childhood analysis, just because it does sound, especially towards more old-fashioned conservative detectives, not conservative as in political parties, but just conservative as in traditional values. It may be sort of a new age kind of psychological mumbo-jumbo of sorts. However, there's some merit to at least prove a little bit of merit in this theory. Of course, it's not foolproof. There have been wrong convictions, and times where it just simply doesn't work. However, in the case of Ted Bundy and Edmund Kemper, along with others, the possible correlation between childhood trauma and predictions of future actions of serial killers and apprehension of serial killers is quite prominent, in my opinion. So, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed and understood. Yeah, thank you.